Godtear. Now, at this point in the game, this life cycle in the game, we have a massive, massive base of champions. There are a lot of warbands to customize, to play, and explore. Now, I won't say we've got enough. I want more warbands, right? There's this duality of, I love war games, I've got poor impulse control, and I'm a completionist. So I just want tons and tons and tons and tons of warbands. But at some point, what we get into is, how do we utilize all these warbands? Both in a game that we kind of want to keep different, we want to kind of keep exciting, but also if you're building up your Godtear collection, to get the most out of that miniature collection. So part of this is a template for wargaming in general, when you've got a lot of models, factions, armies, and different things, but also looking more on the unorthodox tactics of Godtear and some of the different things to do. Now, we've got this framework, and I can't really answer this question, but I got to put it out there. You're doing this wargaming thing. We're doing this Godtear thing. And all of us have a player personality. Things that we like to play, things that we like to do. There's going to be certain champions that naturally you gravitate towards. There's going to be certain combos that you're like, I like this for whatever reason. The meta, it's powerful. When I pull this off, I'm always playing Shale. And guys are like, Fritz, Shale is whack, man. But I'm like, yo, if I can get these combos off, like it's amazing. So I'm in it for that one moment where things align. But you get a Slayer up there, he's just going to fold really fast. A lot of different ways to explore, to explain, and do. But what that means is if you've got 15 champions in your collection, you personally, you're probably going to navigate to 3 or 4 or 2 really focused builds over time. This means other champions are not being played. The other aspect to this is, when you play your friends in Godtear, they kind of know what to expect. They know what they can do. The third aspect and layer is, and this is, again, could also apply to other war games, we're missing out on taking advantage of our miniatures, but also developing ourselves as war gamers in the first place. Sometimes going to battle for those salty tears with warbands that you don't normally play forces you in the moment to make combos happen or to try and set up certain scenarios of play. It helps flex those wargaming muscles a little bit. We've got that focus. Now, layering over that, if it is competitive Godtear play, I want to break this down into 2 ways. A lot really depends on your Godtear group. If it's competitive play where we're in a tournament, naturally I'm bringing the best meta that I can, or the groups and configurations and warbands that I am most familiar with. But if it's a little bit more casual play or playing with your friends, then look, let's try different things. Unless you've got that friend where you're like, look, I just can't lose to this guy, because then I'm going to hear about it all week, how great they are, how they're the ultimate, Godtear champion. I'm going to get random memes and texts all week. Like, I got to bring my best. Know the battle that you're going into. Godtear can play 1, 2, or 3 warbands with the rules as written. Now, of course, I love big games. I love making that happen. There have been times where we have had 5 or 6 warbands on each side. And of course, we have to double and we have to adjust the tiers or move with that. But there's sometimes been 6 of us on one side, each playing a warband, 6 on the other side. It's just, it's a blood bowl. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. Breaking the rules of the game to have fun. But within that framework, we're going on operating 1, 2, or 3 groups. The game really wants you to play, while it's possible for 1 and 2, it wants you to play at 3, because you've got the 4 different color focuses. This means you can pull in some synergy, you can pull in some different opportunities, and if you make a mistake somewhere, you've got 2 other warbands to kind of pull that up. So in terms of drafting, this is usually what we'll do to get the most out of the collection. We randomly, so we've got every champion between the players that we play, multiples of all these champions. So the first thing we do, of course, is sit down and randomly draw what is the order of who picks what. So let's say we've got 3 players or 4 players or just you and I. You pick first, then I pick. You pick, I pick. So you get to pick first. And most of the time, if we don't dice it off, I'll be like, you know what? You pick the champion first. This drafting gives an interesting perspective. When you get to pick the champion first, 2 things have happened. 3 things have happened. First, you get full first pick. So you're going to get to play that champion that you want to play, that cornerstone strategy. But what you're giving up is the fact that now you've because we're playing with 3 warbands, you've locked that in. I now get to decide, how do I beat that? How do I counter that? Do I want to do that? Do I just want to run away from that? I also get an insight into your play style where I don't quite know, or if I do know, what are you trying to do? So you pick. I pick my first champion. Then it goes back to you, where you pick your secondary champion. I pick my secondary champion. So now what this means is we've got full control. Do I want to get some synergy going? Do I want to double down, dual slayers? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? I have some control. I can start to build my strategy. The third pick is now completely random, completely randomized with how that's going to happen. And what this means is you might get a champion that you were going to pick or a type of build that you were going to pick anyway. You might get thrown something where right off the bat, you're like, I have no idea how this synergy is going to even remotely work. You might get a champion that's never played. And while you're like, okay, I usually don't play this champion. Now I'm going to be forced to. But likewise, your opponent, usually you don't see that champion on the table. They usually don't face it. Even if you get something that has no synergy, you still have control because your draft pick over the first 2, you had full control. So this is a way, in Godtear, the way that we will mix things up to do something a little bit different every time, force you to adapt as a wargamer, but also try to get the most of those players on the table and see how that works.